Today our goal will be to describe the cultural characteristics of Europe, starting with the diversity of its languages. Get ready to turn and talk about the first learning target with your table. What does the word diversity mean? Your group probably talked about how diversity means differences. Well, keep that in mind because today we're going to be learning about how diverse the European languages are. In the United States as a whole, the main language spoken is English. Spanish is quickly becoming a close second, but in this classroom, in places like Atlanta, we are even more blessed with knowing what diversity in languages sound like, because we have people in this classroom who speak all sorts of languages. Some of you are bilingual, some trilingual, and others of you are learning even more languages than that. Well, in Europe, the languages are diverse, so we're going to be investigating some of that today. First, we'll start by setting up your paper. You should have glued this skinny piece of paper with the different clip art photos and the hearts on one of the sides of your paper. Go ahead and title the page Language Families in Europe at the top or the bottom of the page. Also, draw a line across the page for each of the sections. So draw a line all the way across the paper to match the line under the heart diagram. Then draw a line above Einstein's picture all the way across your paper. Now, when I was a student, the teachers would often have me copy down facts and then I'd have to memorize them. Sometimes this process would be very boring, and even after reading the notes, it'd be difficult for me to remember what I was writing about. So before we get started today, I hope you walk away with the idea that you can take anything that's boring and turn it into something memorable and fun. It just takes some creativity. So on the clip art paper itself, you're going to take some notes on the fake language family notes. And then on the rest of the paper, you're going to write down the real facts about the languages of Europe. Now, this might not make sense to you yet, but it will. Look, I'm getting excited about this. So here's the fake news notes that you should write down on the pictures themselves. Now again, this is fake news, so I just made up this story for fun. I hope you enjoy it. Once upon a time in the land of romance. You can write the word romance above or on the heart, aka Italy. There lived a young man named Latinicus. Can you say Latinicus? Also write his name above his head on or his face. Now, Latinicus was a gladiator. He lived in Rome and fought in the Colosseum. He became famous throughout the land because he was brave. All the girls in the land fell at his feet because of how dreamy he was. I mean, look at him. He's totally dreamy, right? He had those Mediterranean waves in his hair, and he wore a toga, and I mean, he was toga-fied. And there was nothing that could go wrong until the day he saw her. Now meet Latinica. Latinica was pretty much the only girl in the kingdom of romance who had no desire to go out with Latinicus. But he loved her, and she just had this attitude about her. Latinicus would ask her, "My fair lady, what is your name?" And she would simply respond with, no. He tried again and asked her, "Latinica, what's your sign?" And she was like, nah. "Latinica, what's your number?" No, you really gotta go. But again, he was known throughout the land for his bravery and his ability to never give up. Latinica at first was all like, Latinicus, you need to calm down and just stop, alright? But then, once he did, she realized that they both had a lot in common. So they fell in love in Italy, the land of romance. You could write romance languages as the title in your real notes. Oh yeah, and if you didn't label Latinica, write her name above her head. Once they wed, they became known as the Latins. First came love, then came marriage, and then came 5 different children that are a part of the romance family. We'll meet them all in a second. But then Latinica and Latinicus, they grew old. And then they died. You could write in your real notes, Latin is dead. Can you also write that Latin is the root of the Romance languages? Now let's meet their children. In your real notes, write 5 Romance languages and number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Latin's first child, delivered by storks, because that's where babies come from, is named Spanitio. Spanitio is one of the lines under the heart in the fake news notes. Then, on your real notes, write 1, Spanish, because Spanish is one of the 5 Romance languages. And here he is saying, Hola. The second child, delivered by storks, because that's where babies came from, is a Francois. Here is a Francois. Write his name on one of the lines on your fake notes. With his baguette and a beret, he probably just ate a croissant, as he says, oh, bonjour. And then write French in your number 2 on your real notes. The third child, delivered by storks, because that's where babies come from, is Sir Portuguese, spelled like the language Portuguese for ease of note-taking. Hola, he says. Wait, that's weird. Sounds a lot like Spanish. The fourth child, delivered by storks, because that's where babies come from, is Italiano. Here he is saying, ciao. He probably just ate a pizza after visiting the Leaning Tower of Pisa. The fifth and final child is, well, I should pause. How many of you in here are a lot like your brother or sister? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you are very different from your brother or sister? Raise your hand. Well, just like some of us are like our brothers and sisters, and some of us are very different, the Romance languages are sometimes alike and sometimes very different. Spanish and Portuguese, for example, are so similar. People who can speak Spanish can kind of understand Portuguese, and vice versa. Now, this is because of how closely these languages develop together. Now, people who speak French have a much more difficult time understanding Spanish. And this is partially due to geography, because there's a physical barrier between Spain and France. The boundary is a mountain range. And if you're thinking the Pyrenees, you're correct. So Spanish and Portuguese are a lot alike. Now, the last Romance child that we're about to talk about, people actually think she's like adopted, because she is just so different. The last child, delivered by storks, because that's where babies come from, is called Romania. Now, in your real notes, the fifth language is Romanian. And that is the Romance family. Next, let's meet the Slavic family. Now, you'll notice that the picture for the Slavic family are what's called Russian nesting dolls. This is on purpose. Russian nesting dolls have bigger and smaller sizes, just like the countries that are a part of them come in different shapes and sizes. Also, historically, they were at one time one massive country, the USSR, Soviet Union. But then they split up into smaller countries found in Europe today. On the lines off the Slavic family, you can write Russian, Ukrainian, Polish, Czech, and more. In your real notes, title this note section Slavic family, then write that they use the Cyrillic alphabet. Here's a picture of the Cyrillic alphabet. It looks much, much different than ours. Then write at least 3 of the languages, but make a note that there are many more. Finally, in the last section of your real notes, write Germanic family. The fake story of this one is symbolic. You'll see a picture of Albert Einstein. Now, Albert Einstein is a famous individual with a background that is helpful to us. Einstein was born in Germany, and German was his first language. Throughout his life, he learned other languages, including English. While Einstein was visiting the USA in 1933, Hitler came to power. Because Einstein has a Jewish background, he remained here in the USA. English, German, and Dutch are examples of Germanic languages spoken in Europe. These languages are rooted in Latin and Greek, and their sentence structure is different than the Romance language families. Whew! Alright, there were a lot of different languages found in Europe, and I want to thank you guys for listening to my tales of the language families of Europe. Enjoy the rest of your class.